Our session now is connecting the youth to the church. Now, I love this subject. I think this subject is just fantastic for us. It's something that I have always loved. My wife and I, we have worked a lot of years at trying to accomplish this in our own local church. I'm the senior youth leader at our church. She's the junior youth leader. And somewhere out there in the virtual world is Christina, who's our gopher leader at our church. And we've worked really hard to build connections between the youth and the adults in our church. Now, I can honestly say it has been tough, but it is well worth the effort and the time that is involved in getting all of that done. Now, I also have to say, as a Word of Life local church missionary, it is a key part of what we teach to you guys as youth leaders. We spend a lot of our time trying to help you, challenge you, impact you, train you, all of these type of things. And it revolves around getting the kids involved, not only at youth, but in their churches and getting you to get them involved in that. I can't stress the importance of ensuring that the youth remain in the church. Now, one of the phrases I'm going to say periodically through this lesson is, our goal is to help the young people remain faithful to the local church for a lifetime. And that's got to be one of our long-term goals as youth leaders, and wherever you fall within that circle, that's got to be something that we're striving to do. Now, before I go any further, I want to take a moment and I want to share with you just a quick little thing, kind of a definition of words here so that we're all on the same page. When I say stay in a church for a lifetime, please understand that may not be your church. It may not be the church that they grew up in. I really do wish that was possible for sure. And I know there's a lot of pastors out there, and you guys as youth leaders, myself included, we don't want to lose these kids, but things happen and they move on for different reasons. We've invested so much time, so much effort into developing and caring for them, and teaching these kids. But unfortunately, young people move off for different reasons. What we want to see is that they remain faithful to a local church for their entire lives, no matter where they end up. And that's got to be our goal. I know that's hard sometimes because we want to keep them. We put all that effort in, we want to keep them with us. But a lot of times we're going to be training them for someone else. And hopefully someone out there is training their kids for you at some point down the road. But that's got to be something that we all understand and move forward with going through this. And I want you to understand that is important as we move forward. Now, God created the local church as a way for us as believers to get together for fellowship and for worship. Attending church is important for us on many different levels. I imagine right now, going through the COVID thing, that many of us are missing those precious times in our churches, with our families there, with our friends there, and with the youth right now. I know for me personally, I am absolutely missing just seeing people face to face and chatting with them. Anybody who comes to my house or comes to the gate, I'm going to talk to them for a while because I miss those interactions. There's just something about seeing someone face to face that helps us connect with each other. And I know recently down here, we got this brainstorm of an idea, and we all jumped into our cars, all of us youth leaders. We jumped into our cars and we started handing out, we started taking brownies to all of the youth in our church. So we all had our masks on. We didn't get out of the car. We had them come up to the car, and we handed them a packet and all of those things. And we included verses that they needed to learn. But it was just that opportunity to see their faces. I mean, I haven't seen them in months, some of them. And I think some of the parents were probably more excited to see us than even the youth were. Now, when it comes to church, the same reasons that we as adults attend local church are the same reasons our youth need to be attending as well. Let me share a quick verse, a passage with you quickly that lets you know that we all need to be staying in church. In Hebrews, and I think I have it on the PowerPoint here, in Hebrews 10, verse 24 and verse 25, it says this: "And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and to good works, not neglecting to meet together, as it is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near." So when I think about the fact of God wanting us to meet together, the very first
It looks like we have just lost Brad somewhere, but we trust in the Lord that He will be back with us. So I just want to encourage you as you are listening to this time, and also after this session, we're going to have a time where we have a time of asking questions our leaders. And now Brad looks like he's back. I'm going to take it back from him.
All right, sorry about that. I don't know where I got paused. I don't know what happened or why I got kicked out. But let me just go back a little bit, and hopefully that catches up where we were. So it was a command of God. The first reason and the most simple reason for us to be at church is because God has commanded us to be there. So in that passage, we can clearly see that God does not want us to neglect getting together, meeting together. It's His desire for us and to meet together as a family. And that's one of the things at our church, we always talk, it's our family. We got to be together as a family. Now, one of the key characteristics of this generation of Gen Z is that they value electronic messages as much as we value the face-to-face conversations. Now, my question is, however, have you noticed a clear drop in the messages and participation in the virtual meetings and group messages in the last few months? I certainly have. You know, it's not just from the youth, but also from youth leaders. It seems like we're texting a little bit less and we're getting involved a little bit less. And I think that's because we're not really having those face-to-face interactions. God knows that we need to have those in order to survive. This pandemic has taught us a lot of things. And I think this is one of those that we really need to take to heart. We need those times. We need to be in church, gathering together. And there will be a time that we can all start doing that again, I'm sure. Now, in that passage, there are a few other reasons stated or given to us why we need to be attending the local church. And I thought, going through this, the second one there that you'll see is accountability. And then the third one is exercising our gifts. When I read that passage and I see that section where it says, stir up one another to love and to good works, we are to be provoking each other. I love that. That's in the King James Version. Provoking one another to good works with love and all of those things. So we should be getting together, asking each other or holding each other accountable if we're serving God, if we're using our gifts for the furtherance of the gospel. And those are great reasons for being in church. And then there's the fourth one that I had going through this was for encouragement. In the second verse there, verse 25, it actually says encouraging one another. All four of these reasons are great for us and great reasons for us to be in church. And they are not exclusive for adults. These same reasons apply to all ages of believers. All believers need to be in the church. All ages need to be involved with accountability, serving, and encouragement. Too many times I see young people getting pushed aside, or they're set down on this other way, or they're out of the way so that the adults can do church undisturbed by the noise or the disruption that the kids might cause. Now, there are many more reasons why biblically we could say this, and I want to mention one last one very specifically tonight, because I think it's super important for us as we go through this. Church needs to be, or church is to be a family activity. When we go to church, the whole family needs to go. Everybody needs to be involved in the function of that church. Paul wrote many letters to the churches of his day. Paul wrote many letters to the churches there, and two in particular. And we find these in Ephesians chapter 6 and Colossians chapter 1. If I read, let me show this one to you. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1, he says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right." Now, I'm not a super great on English and grammatical and things, but when I read that, it reads as if Paul is talking to the kids. Paul is talking to the children. He's not telling the parents to go tell their kids or encouraging us as youth leaders or encouraging the youth leaders to teach this principle to them. He's speaking right to them. It was understood that the children would be present for the reading of his letters. The whole family was there in the church. when these letters were read. Now, I remember a few years ago, when I was growing up, my whole family went to church. We went to church together. Our normal Sunday was that we would come to church, and there was two services. First, we had our Sunday school, and then we went to what was worship service. So there was two different things. So we would all end up at worship service in the beginning, and then we would all come back together for worship service. Now, in the worship service, as we were sitting together, that was all through the beginnings, the normal beginnings of a service. But just before the message was about to start, the kids would be dismissed for what we called junior church. This was a service designed for the children and for those aged, for children and up to 18. They broke us up into different age groups so that they could teach more effectively to us and more appropriately to our needs. And as a young person, it was great. I loved having a message that was designed for me, applicable to me, and it really hit me where I was in my life. Now, however, if anyone misbehaved, now I'm not saying that I ever did this, so I don't know if I ever experienced this, but if somebody misbehaved, they would be threatened with the prospect of having to go back to adult church to sit with their parents. Now, this was embarrassing for the kid. This was embarrassing for the parents. I mean, it was just embarrassing. And kind of, we've all been there. If you've taught kids, you've kind of been in this situation where there's one or two kids who are giving you a difficult time, and you just want to send them out so that you can teach to the rest of the youth. I get that. I've been there as well. But here's the problem. In that situation, we just made church this terrible place that you have to go when you're getting into trouble. It implies that church is boring and a terrible place to be. What kid ever wants to go there? When then the time comes along when we no longer have a youth meeting for them to attend, and their only option is to go back to adult church. No wonder they all want to run away. Going to worship service should be a natural transition. It should be very comfortable for the young people to be able to step into church and to be a part of that. Now, let me be very clear there, all right? This is really important. I am not saying that we all need to cancel our Sunday schools or our youth meetings. What I am saying is that we need to be training our youth, both in word and deed, that the worship service is a family-friendly place. And they can go there and be accepted, and they can learn. So our churches need to create an environment where the young people would be at ease and excited to be there. Okay? A place where families can worship and learn God's word together. All right, now I got to talk about a hard thing part. This is the hard part of this lesson. And it's that many churches, that there are many churches out there that really aren't youth friendly. If they were, we would be having a whole bunch more young people than we currently are. There's a survey done by Lifeway Research in 2017. It's the most recent one I could find. It said that 66% of young people stop attending church when they turn 18. All right, now this is better than the George Burna one in 2007 that said 70% are leaving, but it's only marginally better. It's not that much difference. Now, the other thing that you should know about those statistics are that about half of those kids or half of those young people will return to church after about 10 years, right? Which that's great. That's good news that they're getting. The problem is we should not be losing them in the first place. Now, I'm sure you would agree that it is not good news for our churches that we're losing this many kids. So we've got to be able to figure out how to change that. Now, you've probably seen this firsthand in your own churches. I want you to think about your own youth program right now. Think about from preschool all the way up to senior youth. Do the numbers, remember, we're not big on numbers, but are the numbers growing as they get older, or are the numbers decreasing as they get older? The other question is, thinking about the young adults, those aged 19 to 29, we'll say that. You currently have very many in your church at that or that age. I hope you have plenty. And I certainly hope that this is not a problem area for you and your church. But the truth is, many of us are dealing with a mass exodus of young people from our churches. So the question is, how do we change this trend? How do we keep these precious little ones in our church for a lifetime? Now, there's two parts to that question. First, we need to understand why they're leaving. And then we need to understand why some are staying. I personally like the second part because it's what we're doing right. But we also need to look at the other side of what we're doing wrong in order to make the necessary corrections so that we can move forward and do this in the right way. A bit of self-evaluation is good for us, but it also can be a bit of a challenge. So I want to look at that tough section first, and then we'll get to those positive ones. And so the idea is why, or what are the reasons of why they are leaving? So what are the reasons for them leaving? I love reading books, and I hope you guys are reading a ton of books at the moment because it's a great time to be reading during our lockdown. So I'm hoping you're reading. And I've been loving, of recent, probably the last few years, reading and focusing on books that deal with Gen Z. I really want to get to know them. I want to understand what makes them tick and their issues that are going on with them. And this specific topic, fills many of the pages of the books. And there are just a ton of blogs from young people sharing their personal opinion on this issue. So I kind of went through all of those, and I wanted to gather some common ones together. And I pulled just a few of those together for us so that we can maybe go through these quickly and just get a good idea of what the main points are out there. Now, before I share those ones, there are 3 common reasons given by most everyone when you read through them. And I want to share these because these are ones that we don't have any control over. There's nothing we can do to change this or make these ones better. They're out of our control. The first one is when they leave for university, so school. School will often take them to different areas. I know oftentimes here in Durban, we lose kids to, Pretoria or Joburg for whatever reason. But we also get some down here from those areas as well. The second one is they find that special someone, right? So family. And that takes them off to another church or to a different area. And then the third one is when they find employment, the work. These are all areas that we really can't control. And they are big reasons. So those are high. Those are very understandable as you go through those. But my concern with those 3 is oftentimes that they don't find a good Bible-believing church wherever they end up. For me, as I was reading through the books and the articles, this is a hole that I found. No one seems to talk about that issue. They just give those reasons as to why. But we really want them. We want them to be there. And I think the youth are using those as examples or as excuses to leave because it's not on them. It's not my fault that I have to go to school. It's not my fault I found a job over there. And it doesn't hurt anybody. It's not like it's a personal offense to anybody when they say, well, I'm leaving because, I'm going to go live where my husband is or my wife is or my family's moving. So it's not personal. And then they just use that as an excuse never to go back. So now I want to look at a few of the reasons that we can change, or the things that we can control in some way. So the first one, as we look at this, is the church isn't relevant, right? Whether it be political, social, or just answering the tough questions. The young people are not getting the answers from the church. These young people have school, they have TV, and they have the internet at their fingertips, right? They have all of this information. If the church isn't answering the tough questions, the young people will fill that void with these other places that don't speak truth. Satan has done a masterful job at answering questions and making those answers sound reasonable. No one, not myself, nobody is expecting you to have all of the answers. There are a lot of times where we have had to say, and I've had to say this myself, there are times where we've had to say, I don't know, but I will find the answer and I will get back to you. But I think sometimes we use that answer as an excuse or just the simple response because we really haven't put the time in to studying and finding the answers to those questions. I think it's important for us as leaders to kind of get off that and just say, okay, I'm going to start studying these. The kids are coming with the same questions over and over, and if the kids are doing that, if the kids are coming back to you over and over with the same question, it's because we haven't satisfied them. We haven't given them a relevant answer to that question. And there are times where we may have to answer that same question over and over and over until we give them a good enough answer until they're satisfied. We just have to change how we answer those questions. So we must give them good answers. And if we don't, we're going to lose them to the world that's full of lies. The second one, going through this, is the church is shallow, right? Now, the common areas that the young people felt that the church was shallow there was two of them. First is the people. So the people were shallow. And then we'll talk about the second one in a moment. And now the youth are always watching us. I'm sure you guys know this by now and you have seen it by now. They're always watching us. And they're going to see if what we say is actually what we do. So does our talk match our walk? It reminds me of the passage in John chapter 13, verse 15, where it says, and this is Jesus talking, "For I have given you an example that you also should do just as I have done to you." Here Jesus is challenging the disciples to be like him. Do what I do. Wouldn't it be great? I think this would be awesome. Wouldn't it be great if we as youth leaders, if we had the courage and the discipline to say the same thing to our youth? I mean, that's what Ken was talking about, or he was sharing about with his quiet time. Remember, he said, I wasn't doing it. My kids weren't doing it. But when I started doing it, he said, you can check mine anytime you want. He had the courage to say, let's do this together. And let's walk this walk together. We've got to have the courage to be able to do that. We've got to be able to have that courage to say, come follow me as I follow after Jesus Christ. As after all my years working with Word of Life and working in different churches and visiting different youth groups, I can tell you right now, if your youth are struggling with their quiet times, it is probably because we as leaders are struggling with ours. If I haven't done mine much that week, I certainly am not going to ask the youth if they have done theirs, because it would be embarrassing for them to ask me. The youth know this. It's not a surprise to them. And when we teach this, and this is the other thing, when we teach this principle of quiet time in front of them, and then refuse to follow through with it ourselves, we are showing the kids just how shallow we are. And I want you to understand, we can take that quiet time, that principle of quiet time, and we can add in pretty much any biblical principle going through that as well. I think of scripture memory, memorizing our verses for the year, Christian service, gospel conversations, church attendance, reading Christian books. The list goes on and on, going through all of those. If we as leaders are not leading the charge in these areas, the kids will see church as shallow and hypocritical. All right, the second one under shallow was the teaching or showing the teaching is shallow material. Now, if you're teaching the Word of Life lessons, then there's nothing shallow about the content of those lessons. Each year they put together just really great, relevant, and solid in their content. However, if you are not helping the youth make personal application, then you're missing a key part of all of this. Application is where we take a chance, or where we take the material or the information that's taught to them, and we just help the kids get a little bit deeper into God's Word to make it a little more personal in their lives. We must be sure to take the time to walk with them, walk with the youth as they apply the Word of God in their lives each week. So important for us to be able to do that. All right, now the third one is a lack of connection to the people in the church. All right, one of the surveys that I read shared that 29% of youth left the church because they didn't feel the church, or they didn't feel a part of the church in any meaningful way. 29%. It doesn't sound like a huge number. It's only, less than a third, about a third of them. But when you add that in with all the other reasons they're leaving, it is one of the major parts of why kids are leaving. Guys, we are one body. We need to be working together for the glory of God. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be what is happening. Remember earlier when I shared my experience with junior youth and the adult church thing, we often are creating divides between our youth and the adults in our church. We may have great intentions in what we are doing, and they're great things to be able to do. But instead, we need to be looking for ways to connect people of all ages, not divide them. We need each other to accomplish our God-given task of reaching everyone with the gospel of Jesus Christ. We could spend a whole bunch of sessions just going through some of these reasons of why they left, but I believe we need to move over to the other side of why they're staying. I think this one is super valuable for us because these are the positive things, and we need to make sure that we're doing these things well. The easy thing here to say is, and then, this would be me, is just take all those negative ones and flip them over. And there we go. We're all done. We can call it quits for the night. But there are some other ideas in this that I think we need to highlight, that we need to talk about when we talk about the youth staying in our churches. All right. So the first reason, and I was shocked by this, to be honest. The first and most common reasons why people are staying is they're truly converted. And hopefully that kind of is a bit of a shock to you. I just kind of was thinking they're all Christians. They all know Christ. And we know that not to be true. And we need to make sure that we have the right information we're sharing with them. We need to be sharing each and every one of our youth so that they hear the gospel clearly and regularly at our youth nights. Now, this one as well, as I was reading through this one and I started really kind of digging into it and trying to find some more information about it, it actually kind of brought not just the gospel message, but also how we teach or what we're teaching, so that relevant material, which, I think is important for us to understand. And as I was reading through, one of the surveys that I was reading, it shared this, and I'm sorry I'm giving you all these numbers, but I think it's important for us to know some of these. So there was a survey that asked all the kids who had stayed certain questions, and then a survey of all the kids who had left certain questions. And the first question was, do you believe that the Bible contains everything a person needs to live a meaningful life? So do you believe the Bible? Basically, that's the question. Of those who stayed in church, 65% of them believed that. So they believed that the Bible was important and that it was relevant and they needed to know it. On the other side of that, those who left, only 17% believed that. So hopefully you grasp the idea there. There's a lot of kids who are leaving because they just don't get that the Bible is relevant to them. 17%. Then it asked a second question, and that one was, do you believe that Jesus speaks to them in a personal way, in a relevant way? Is this whole thing relevant to your personal life? Of those who stayed, 68% said yes. Yes, I believe Jesus is real. I believe he's relevant, and I believe he's speaking to me through his word. I think it's important. On the other side, it was only 25%. And as I don't know about you, but I feel like this revolves around our teaching and our ability to make personal application of God's word in their lives. Truly converted and truly growing in their walk is a major sign of those who will remain in churches for a lifetime. All right, number 2 in this one is equipped, not entertained. All right, there is more to going to church than just sitting there listening to a pastor or a youth leader teach from the Bible and singing some awesome songs or playing some great games. There's more to it than all of that. We are to prepare our youth for ministry. They have ministry in their communities. They have ministries in their schools. They have ministries in their homes. This should start right in our churches. The youth need to have responsibilities. Sorry. Okay, there we go. The youth need to have responsibilities within our churches. The bigger, the better. All right, do hard things. Have them do some hard stuff. Now, here's the thing. They're going to make mistakes. Things are going to go terribly wrong at times, but they are learning to be used by God in the church. Because this is one of those key things to keeping them. If they are a contributing member of the body of Christ, they will continue to be there and continue to participate after they graduate. Think about what Jesus said in Matthew 20, verse 28, which says this: even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. We go to church to serve, not to be served. We need to give some responsibilities to the young people. This gives them that value, their feeling and the feeling of being needed in church. We don't want them to feel like a bystander or with no values or no value to us. They are our church. They are the church, and we need them to be a part of it. All right, the third one is connections. All right, now I spoke about this a little bit earlier in the negative one, not having connections. So I am going to flip this one around. And I think it's important that we understand this. Of those who remained in church, okay, so they stayed in church after they matriculed or after they graduated, they had a personal connection with at least 5 adults in their church. Catch that. 5 adults, other than their parents, can include you as youth leaders, but should be other people, right? But 5, they need to have a connection with 5 adults. Gen Z, for that generation, they are very much relational to their core. They love people. They want to be involved with people. And they'll make great personal sacrifices to continue those relationships. So we as youth leaders, we need to be sure that we have plenty of chances, that we create plenty of chances for those kids to make connections with the other adults or with adults in our churches. All right, I want to spend I'm kind of running out of time. I want to spend the last little bit giving you some ideas of things that have worked for us or things that we have taught in the past. So I'm going to quickly kind of go through these with us. There's only 3, and in your notes, these are just blanks, so you're just going to have to fill these in. All right. First, with the relevant teaching. Here again, if you are teaching the Word Life material, it is there. It is great. It's relevant. It's perfect for the kids. However, we need to make sure that we're doing the proper follow-up with them. So we need to be making sure, one, that we're teaching with excellence. So we're spending the time needed to teach and prepare that lesson, but also the small groups. I think the small groups is an area that we just kind of think, oh, I'll wing it when we get there. We need to spend some time preparing for that. I want to challenge you. I want to encourage you to spend about 15, maybe 20 minutes. I know we're not doing this right now, but when we get back to meeting, spend 15, 20 minutes prepping for that small group time. Make a list of your small group. Name out those kids. And as the lesson's being taught, I want you to think of specific applications for each of the young people in your group. I know this could be difficult, and it will be difficult. And if you don't know the kids, it's going to be really difficult. But I want you to be able to help them have that personal application. This can be a huge, very important time for them. All right, the second one on suggestions is the truly converted one. At the beginning of 2019, we as a leadership at our church, we decided that every junior youth and every senior youth meeting, we would share the gospel with everyone. We told the regular attending youth that if they brought a friend to youth, they would definitely hear the gospel that night. Now, we did our best, and sometimes we failed, but we really tried to make sure that every night they would hear the gospel. Now, we also wanted, not just for the unsaved kids that were coming, but we also wanted to do it, we wanted it to be a normal, commonplace for the youth to hear us sharing the gospel, because it would be easy for them to imitate us when they go outside of youth. So with their friends, with their families, wherever God takes them, they've heard it so often, they're able to just continue to share it. It'll become easier for them to share. Guys, we never should assume anything when it comes to the gospel message. All right, number 3, and this is our last one, connections. All right, connections. This is an important one. I've talked about it twice already, and I'm going to end on this one because I think it is super important for us to be able to do this. We've all tried to recruit different leaders, from parents to young adults to older folks, and we've tried the best that we can to try to recruit those. My challenge for you, or the encouragement, is don't recruit them for all of youth. Recruit them for parts of youth. So, we need people to listen to verses or check quiet times, and that's all they need to do. We need people to do small groups. We need people who are gifted at teaching. They don't have to do anything else but those parts. We also need drivers. We need games people. We need people who want to bring food for us. Anytime that we can get the youth with an adult and get them together for whatever reason, they just might make a connection that will last. I imagine your church is much like ours, in the fact that there are many young people attending that either don't have parents or their parents just aren't involved. It always creates issues when it comes down to activities, church activities, and youth outings. What we've done, and it seems to be working so far, is we've asked an adult or the adults to pray for 1 or 2 of our youth for the year. Now, what we've done is we've had the youth complete a questionnaire, basic information, nothing major, nothing super personal. And then we've handed out that information to those who had volunteered. So that's our first connection. We have the adults praying for the youth. Great way to get that first connection. Then when we have a youth outing, so we want to go do something with the youth or camp or Smash or whatever it is that we're taking them on, we ask those who are praying for those kids to help them, to support them. One, pray for them, but also support them if needed for that. That's our second connection. So they're getting involved with them on a financial side as well. Then if the church has an activity, which at our church always includes food, that's a great thing. What we do is we ask those adults to provide food for the kids they're praying for. So we want them to sit, to eat together, to fellowship together. And we ask them to provide the food so that the church doesn't have to sponsor for a whole bunch of kids. That's our third connection. That's 3. The more times we can facilitate getting them together, the more we increase the chances of a lasting connection. Because that's only a beginning of a list. We can have a ton more ideas. And if you have ideas, please send them to us. We would love to be able to do those. All right, let me close with one last thought. All right, and now we'll finish and we'll head off to small groups. If you follow all the advice that you find in this lesson or all the books you read or even on the internet, if you fix all of the problems that potentially we mentioned earlier in the other ones, it never guarantees success. We as leaders need to do the best we can to lead these youth to the place where the Holy Spirit can challenge them, where he can change their hearts. I wish I could say that we could get them all and keep them all, but ultimately they have to decide for themselves. But can I say, and last slide there, if I can get it, the more connections they have with the church, the better chance we have of seeing them remain in a local church for a lifetime.